mine, and I'm just going to start doing the trivia that I know is probably pretty random. For, let's see, what size shirt is it? Fuck it, who cares? So, in the movie War Games, what was the launch code?
Which one? We're like 20, and it was
No, that was incorrect. You're saying Joshua was the back-end password to get in.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's the same number. Same number as my luggage. No. What was the launch code to launch the missiles in the movie War Games? Huh?
Do you know the answer?
Yes.
Was there like 10 launch codes on the same screen? And
No, it was 1. It was 1, and it was going through crack. You seriously? Nobody else in the room knows that?
8, 6, 7, 5.
It's alphanumeric. No, it's Tommy Two Tones actually. Next. Yeah, whoever can Google it fast. Never mind. Gee, I guess I get a medium shirt that says No Starch Press on it that won't fit a single part of my body. Actually, the answer to that one is CPE 1704 TKS. What is it? Incorrect. It's actually in the movie several times. Once the launch panel in the silo, they show it hard-coded into little flip switches, and at the end of the movie as it runs by. Yes, I'm telling you, IMDb is wrong. I watched it 20 times in the theater within 2 weeks. So, okay, here's the next one. I'll tell you, to the degree I actually watched that movie, what is Stephen W. Falken's home address?
I know the island. It's on Staten Island. It's 417.
Have one. Seriously, you guys. All right, we got to rent it. We're watching it tonight.
Although they showed it at Is that on Blu-ray yet?
I got it on VHS. So anyway, it's that old. Robert Hume, a.k.a. Stephen W. Falken, 5 Tall Cedar Road, Goose Island, Oregon. Here, you're close enough. Have a shirt.
That's the second game. Can I have a book?
Yeah, here, swap with me.
Actually, I gave the last one
Who wants a medium shirt? Who wants a medium shirt? You have to come up with the next trivia. You have to come up with the next trivia question. Yeah.
What is Skydog Social? What's Skydog's waist size? I remember.
You asshole. Do what now?
You got it.
What was the question?
What number am I thinking of?
Oh, you suck. It's got to be better than that. The number is 10. Not from New Hampshire. There you go. You have to come get it.
Binary or base 10?
You guys, you're terrible.
Okay.
You're good?
Yep.
So, what kind of time do I have? I got a few minutes to talk.
Make quick. Because I use it all.
You get it all. Don't worry. So, T-shirts. We've actually started knocking out some T-shirts. This is this year's T-shirt with a little bit of screen. Is there what? Macintosh? We call them ATMs in the South, yeah. Would you like a Coke? Yeah, I'd like a Pepsi. So anyway. So basically, I don't know if you saw the sign-in board that's in the other room, the conference room, but every signature that's on here is the signature of someone who showed up last year and signed the sign-in board. Now, there's an interesting contest that's based around the shirt, and I'll explain that in just a second. What are you trying to read? Do what?
Who doesn't exist?
Somewhat. So we're going to knock out shirts. They're on sale. They'll give you a ticket. You bring the ticket to me while I'm making them. I'll make sure that you get the size shirt that you want. So the contest, which I have yet to determine exactly what the prize is, and if CP's not in here, it's probably going to be a bottle of Mogan David. So anyway, there are 2 signatures on this shirt for people who did not attend last year. One of them was a practical joke, and I thought I'd have some fun with it, and add a second one in. So the first person to come to me that can tell me the 2 signatures on the shirt of people that did not attend the con last year. No, he was here, if you remember.
I can take a big guess.
I can take a big something.
You can take a big one.
Shut up. So, AC, are we recording? Or? We're recording now? Okay. So, on the, excuse me, guys, on the shirts and on your swag, you see the year of due, 2010, the year of due. So, the reason I picked that for a theme this year is at the Hacker Consortium in Nashville, we have a really bad case of wouldn't it be cool if. We have a lot of things where everyone says, oh, man, wouldn't it be cool if we did so-and-so? Or, hey, man, wouldn't it be cool if we did this and that and the other, got together with these people, blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is you come up with these great ideas, or you collaborate at a con or something like that, or you hang out with Pres Mike and you want to see how much alcohol you can pump into a body that size. But what ends up happening is everyone makes these great plans, and then you go home from the con, and then you never really do any of those things. So I picked 2010 as the year of due, because it's about time we made some things happen. You know, you got all these people sitting around you can collaborate with. Let's face it, Outerz0ne is not DEF CON, it's not ShmooCon, it's not a con. Is that a double negative? So anyway, we're completely different. The reason is there's 100 or so people in the room that have signed up, somewhere around that. I'd have you count, but I know someone's going to screw that up. So the real draw and appeal of Outerz0ne is you can come to our con and in the weekend get completely trashed with every person in this room. At DEF CON, you have 8,500 people wandering around. You could miss your best friend, all weekend long, never see them, no matter how hard you try. So Outerz0ne actually was started by a few people. Pres Mike was one of them, Lady Merlin, myself, and another guy that I don't ever talk to anymore, but we love you, Joe, you bastard. So we started this con kind of to snub our nose at a gentleman who had another con called Enterzone. Yes, there is kind of a joke based on the name there. I don't know why we used that, but we started this con kind of as a thumbing our nose to him, and everyone kept saying, hey, we're doing it again next year, right? So here we are 6 years into it, and it's still, as far as I know, the longest running donation-only based con. The cash that starts it up every year comes out of my pocket, Scott's pocket, Pres Mike's pocket. We throw it into a pile. We spend a lot of cash. My goal is to break even. I'm not in it for a profit. It's nice to have money to start with the next year, but I'm not drawing a salary from this. I'm not calculating the numbers trying to figure out how much money I'm going to make based on how much I sell. I really just want to break even and have a real good time with all my friends. I'm in it for the groupies, actually. So you'll hear over the course of the evening, I'll talk about the donations, their signs up, and things like that. To hit DEF CON, the current price is what, $120? Well, you haven't had to pay it forever. Who's actually had to pay to go to DEF CON? Was it $125?
It goes up every year.
$140 to go to the con. Yeah. DEF CON charges and makes a lot of money, but they're in the business of getting a large number of hackers together, so I don't fault them for that. But $140 is pretty expensive, and there are a lot of guys here who rode in the back of someone's vehicle, and they're crashing on someone's floor. So every dollar that you spend is calculated way before you get here because, well, it's either eat now or eat later, but take your pick. Some of us here actually have good jobs that pay decent cash. So as far as the donations and everything go, throw some cash in the bucket if you feel it's been worth it, if you had a good time. If there's somebody that you know of that can't afford to throw anything in there or can't afford to eat, buy them a dinner. You don't have to worry about buying them alcohol, go see CP. But if you feel that you got something out of the weekend and it was worth doing, throw a couple of dollars in. It helps to pay for the cost of things. Everyone has a squeeze bottle that has the logo and everything on it. That's so that I don't know that you're drinking something alcoholic because you put water in a squeeze bottle, right? So anyway, I have plausible deniability. The little cell phone carriers, the Diddy case that you got with the logo on it, all of those things were actually purchased from the cash that we piled together. Like I say, I'm not trying to make a major profit. I'm just trying to break even on it. So if you can kind of look at some of the things that you get, the amount of hardware that we bring to do the video, the power that we have to pay for Scott to be able to run this rig up here for the next 30, 40, 50 minutes, it's expensive. We also, our speakers, we would love to do wonderful things like fly them here, put them up in a room. There's no way in the world I could afford to do that for at least one person, much less 10 or 20. So the way that we say thank you is we give to all of our speakers something special that only they get, the speakers and the staff actually. This year it was a nice canvas tote that had our logo and everything on it with the VIP. They're very important to us, the people that actually put the time in, even if I just did ask them Tuesday. But the people that actually put the time in to do their presentations and everything come out for free, spend the weekend, and have a good time. So we like to say thanks to them. I do actually, I do want to give a shout out to John Bryson. He's not everybody's going to know who he is, but he's going to know who he is. So I'd like to say thanks to him also. I'm going to get out of the way. I've yammered long enough. I'm going to go make some T-shirts. Please don't come back there. Watch Scott, because Scott has got some of the coolest stuff on the planet sitting on this table. So ScottMoulton, one of the guys that helps us put this on, can I have a round of applause?
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. All right, and real quick, too, Freeside tomorrow night has an open house at 5 o'clock. So anybody after the con tomorrow or something that wants to swing by Freeside, they got open house, so you can go see everything they got and what's going on. All right, I'm ScottMoulton. I do data recovery for a living primarily. I do a lot of forensics work, on dead hard drives as well, so it's kind of a combination thing. But I run a site that's called myharddrivedied.com, and I've been running a data recovery company now for, this will be its 11th year that we've been starting to deal with data recoveries. And I deal with the physical stuff. I deal mostly with the stuff that's really bad. Somebody, a head hits a platter, or somebody threw a drive on the ground or something like that. I tend to get the worst of the worst, and probably because I tend to ask for it seems to be. You keep doing talks like this. I mean, this is my 6th or 7th year doing talks on how to do your own data recovery. And so I've got 50, 60, 70 hours of movie out there I've given away. But I also teach a class to a lot of 3-letter agencies and things like that that's open to the public on certain events. I have a schedule up on myharddrivedied.com, and I basically go around and rent hotels at different cities throughout the U.S. And then we have a class that has about 10 to 15 people where we actually go through the process of doing all the physical recovery, rebuild, and it's about a 60-hour class that we do in 5 days. So we actually live in the hotel, basically, and run the whole thing. So if you guys are interested in the stuff I do, then go look at that later and sign up for a class or something. I have an Atlanta class like in June or July. Next month it'll be in D.C. So keep track of that. But I'm not going to fill you with any fluff or anything. I'm going to basically do the real meat and potatoes. Now, this is, because Atlanta's my hometown here, this is one of the only cons that I'm actually going to do like real live demo. I brought a whole bunch of hardware and I've set it up, mainly because in the last 30 days there's been a new release of some software. There's a new process where basically now people are starting to try to focus on integrating the logical recovery with the physical recovery. And for anybody do forensics, how many people doing forensics? How many people make images like DD or FTK or does anything to make images of hard drives? So you guys know at this point that when you've been doing images, you're doing basically whatever the drive will respond to through either the API through Windows or whatever problem it has, you may still have while you're doing DD or trying to deal with physical images, doing even FTK and things like that. Very few of the pieces of software do anything with control of timing. And typically when you're looking at problems on drives, once you get outside something like 600 millisecond response times, you may actually be able to read the sectors, but Windows isn't going to respond to it, and several of the other file systems and operating systems aren't going to respond to it. So I have a piece of hardware that's called the Deep Spar Disk Imager, which is hardware with software. And so basically at this point, in the last 30 days, I'm running on beta code. I mean, literally beta code that was released like Thursday. So I tested it Friday to make sure that what I had was still up to snuff and was still working. So I'm going to demo something that I think is really awesome, where we're now leaving just this physical image component where we normally deal with sectors. So if you want to know anything about how I repaired the drives or what I've done before I got here, I'm not doing that today. Now I've actually done head replacements or platter replacements and moved the content, and now I'm actually going to have problems imaging it. A constant problem that you will have, like you're dealing with good drives when you're using DD and you're using FTK Imager, if they have a problem, they typically stop. You get a little thermometer bar, well, not in DD, but you get a little thermometer bar, and then bam, it's dead. If there's a problem, it doesn't continue on, and you've got to figure out what happened or where it left off, or if it can, if it has one bad sector, maybe you'll make it through it. But if you got 2 million bad sectors, you're not going to make it through an image, and you're not going to get anything reliable. So that's where I'm starting with 2 million bad sectors on drives that really are damaged, and I'm going to try to get the data off of those types of sectors. So it's normal for me to actually have to do a head replacement or a platter replacement to get a motor running, to get the heads actually working again, or resolder a board to actually repair it and get it going. But most of the time after I do that, there would be no possible way for me to use a piece of software to make an image. It would die. Anytime you do a head replacement, you're going to have a little bit of a misalignment no matter what you do. You might not be able to read every single sector. So that's bad news. So this is a special imager that you can think of as a BitTorrent for a hard drive. Basically, it takes a sector and it treats it as a part. And it doesn't matter what order it gets the parts in. It doesn't matter how it gets them. If it read it once, it never has to read it again. After that, it's going to focus on the ones that are problem areas and go back and whittle those down into smaller and smaller pieces in any order that you want to do it in. There's ways to send it forwards, backwards, turn off cache, turn on cache, change ECC, things like that. I'm not going to talk about everything the machine does because it would take about 2.5 hours for me just to tell you the breadth of what it does. But they have this new module they just added in the last 30 days where they're taking it from a physical recovery and they're going to logical. And what I mean by this is typically if most of you had a drive that was dead and wouldn't mount or something like that, you might try to use something like Foremost or Scalpel or something to go and carve files off of your file system. Right? You guys used to that kind of thing? Like you're going to scan a drive and hope that you're going to be able to read a JPEG by a header and spit it off. But you get a bunch of corrupt files back, right? So what if we could be more surgical? What if we could say, I got a catalog, and this MFT is the most valuable thing on a Windows formatted drive. So MFTs, we're talking NTFS. So I'm expecting that you at least know we're talking about a Windows drive only at this point. And what we're going to do is we're going to do something called MFT file-based imaging. So kind of my disclaimer is, this is beta. I bought a bunch of hardware in the last 24 hours, and I just came and plugged it in. So I have no backup here. I have if something blows up, there's no extra hard drives. There's no extra laptop, and I'm going to push it pretty hard in an hour to get this done. So crap can happen, and I'm running on beta code. So just so you know, I can do it. I've tested it. I've done data recoveries with it already in the last 30 days. But if smoke comes out, that's the way it goes. All right, so this is kind of my whole point that I was trying to make. Normally, you're used to doing a sequential, traditional-based imaging method where you've got to read a drive from beginning to end. And usually you have to do it in one pass. You have to get it done, or it's not complete and you can't do anything with it. And so this is where we're going to kind of get away from that because trying to carve files just doesn't work for the most part. You're going to lose stuff. Even the MFT itself contains files in it. So basically, this is what we're looking at. If you have done carving or you did not get a complete copy of your drive and you try to carve stuff off, these are the kind of things you're missing. You're missing, first thing, you're going to lose a lot of time. This piece of hardware can actually control power, and it can also decide to turn off the hard drive when there's a failure, turn it back on, and restart from another location. So it can actually turn the power off and do things. So it's basically the way to automate this process so I can go home. Small files that exist in the MFT you'd lose fragmented files. Fragmented files are our biggest nightmare. If you have a big database and you're trying to recover it or a video, it's dead. You can't recover the whole thing. It's not going to work. So then you also have sparse files, which are basically kind of compressed files by the operating system. You would lose those. You wouldn't be able to actually recover them completely. There would be empty space that's not separated correctly. And the biggest problem we have is if you've got media damage, you've got head damage on a drive, and it basically whacked the platter, that there will be a spot that is damaged. And if you keep grinding on that sector like some of the other software does to try to read the sectors, it'll actually start digging the head into that location on the platter, doing more damage. So my whole goal would be to skip that. What if I don't need those files? What if I don't need that piece? Since our traditional thing has been to image the drive from beginning to end, well, what if we decided I've got an MFT, which is a database on my computer, and this database says what my files are. It will tell me where my files are and what they are in my directory structure. So if I could choose what I want, I can be surgical in removing the files that I care about. So let me give you kind of an example. If I had a 60 gig hard drive, I've got to copy 117 million sectors in order to have a complete recovery. But what if the documents and settings folder for my user was only 2 million sectors? Then I could do 2 million sectors instead of doing 117 million. So I can cut that way down. So this is what I'm looking at here. Most of you who have done any kind of software or data recovery or used a piece of software that's looked at forensics software, you have basically these metadata files that are on your computer on a NTFS drive. And the ones that are important, basically, for me, is going to be primarily going to be this one here called $MFT. And so Microsoft likes to begin all of their metadata files with dollars, and it's because Microsoft likes dollars. But outside of that, these are the things that we care about. Now, this is just basically telling you what these files are. And the one thing I want you to note is that the master file table basically contains a 1K record for every basic file that you have on your system or folder that actually is on the system. This is the catalog that has all your metadata in it, the dates and timestamps, and in some cases can contain a file. If the file is below like 931 bytes or so, it can actually fit in the MFT. And you would lose these small text files or these small files without this database. The other stuff I don't really care too much about till I get to this one called the bitmap file. The bitmap file tells me all the allocated space on the disk. This is the difference between I am not using a 500 gig hard drive. I'm only using 120 gigs of a 500 gig hard drive. This bitmap file basically tells you that. So if you knew that, you could use that and only copy the 120 gigs and not care about the rest of that 400 gigs you didn't get. So ultimately we can skip what we don't care about. And this is what it would look like if I took that file, that MFT file, and I parsed it into a database. You could see things like this. This is what my file is. Is it good? What is it? What folder does it point to? What's its parent? And all of its other metadata information. This is what I'm going to focus on, and this is what I'm going to go after. And forget about looking at every single sector. So the badly fragmented stuff, if you really look at this picture, you'll see, like, if I only cared about the allocated stuff, I only need to copy these sectors that are touched or something that I care about. Things like unallocated and all this white space and stuff that's in here, I could just skip that. But I need to know exactly what those sectors are that I want to copy. So there's a tool now that does that. So here's the concept. Basically, I've got a tool. It's going to image the MBR. And this tool is kind of a DOS-based tool, so it doesn't run in Windows. It's actually talking through hardware directly to the hard drive, and it runs in DOS. So I don't have Windows, and I don't have the capability of running some really nice GUI. So what ends up happening is I'm going to have to, if I image the MBR and I want to look at it, I've got to take that drive to a Windows machine and look at it. And then I can go back to this machine and run and continue this process. So I'm going to image the MBR. It's going to tell me what my partition tables are. It's going to take those partition tables, and it's going to image. Either I can do just the MFT, or I can do the bitmap. I can do both. I can basically say, just give me allocated files, not all this unallocated stuff I don't care about. And then I'm going to use Windows to select the folders I care about. So I could actually say, I only want this guy's My Documents folder, and not have to choose anything else, and only image just those sectors, skipping fragmentation, skipping all the other problems, and have one consecutive file that actually makes sense. I'm going to image it, and then I'm going to restore just those files. So I'm going to try to be surgical and give you a demo of that actually happening. So this is the box I'm using. It's called a Deep Spar Disk Imager, and this is really the first time I've really done one of these hacker talks that's on a specific piece of hardware. It's a good concept tool, though. It does a lot of diagnostics and a lot of other things. So I think that this is really important, and it would be great to kind of expound upon all the features, and maybe at some point in time other tools will do something similar. But this is a fantastic tool. It's not cheap, though. It's about $3,500. But if you're going to run a data recovery business, this will pay for itself in 2 or 3 recoveries. You'll be done. Not to mention that if you're doing something in an organization where time matters, you're on an oil rig and you have 1 hour to do a recovery, this will be the process that will basically save your life in a situation where, maybe they didn't have a backup. So I'm going to give you a demo now. So I'm going to switch to the machines. Okay.
I know they have backups of the MFT.
Shoot.
Do they have backups of that bit thing too?
Of the bitmap? No, there is. The MFT doesn't. My machine's now shutting down. Isn't that great? All right. So while that reboots, so what he said is that there's a backup of the MFT. There's not actually a backup of the MFT itself. The MFT, there is a MFT mirror, and the MFT mirror is only the first 4 records. It's basically located the center of the disk minus a couple of bytes, and basically it is a pointer back to the original records of where the beginnings of the records are. It's basically for single sector failure, to basically get rid of the fact that if I had a single sector that failed, I could at least find the records that I cared about and point back to them. But that's about it. It's not a complete backup. So if you end up, like an MFT being a small database or something, basically if you needed to, it would be very small in nature. It would be, maybe 300 megs or something for a very large drive. So what I'm using here, basically, if this thing comes up fast enough, I can show you. I've got this box, and this black box, is just in a regular computer. And this box is the boot drive. It is actually the boot device for the computer. There is no Windows drive. There is no other drive. It is a flash device, and it is the boot device. And this boot device is then connected to the source drive, whatever the bad drive is. And let me see if I can show you what it is. Yeah, well, video's not coming up. Of course, see, yeah, something always blows up. All right, so that's not critical anyway. So basically, I've got a source device on this left-hand side, and I've got a destination drive on the right-hand side where I'm going to clone my data to. And so this black box is the boot device. And so it boots, and when it boots, it looks like this. Now, this device can do a couple of things, but basically it can do some diagnostics and stuff. I'm not going to go too far into that, but I'm going to apply power on this box, and this box will start up, and it will begin by trying to mount the drive. It does not. It's basically still a read-only device. All it's going to do is look physically at the device itself and see if if it can actually seek the drive. So when I hit F11, you'll actually see it come up and it'll go busy in the top corner, and then it'll come to drive seek complete and drive ready. That's typically a good signal to me. It's kind of like a modem, a courier modem or something that would actually come back and tell you my drive is actually ready to communicate with. And I can do other things, like I actually have an oscilloscope monitor that I can monitor the 5 and 12 volt current, so I can see what kind of thing is actually happening on the device. So you can actually see it during its power cycle. When it comes back on, spindle spins up and heads move, and whether or not the PCB board actually has a processor that's locked on it. So I can tell a lot of things like that. Normally, at this point, I would be able to do a list of the drives. I can see my source drive. The serial numbers and LBA numbers are really good signs. That means at least the drive can mount. Even if I have a lot of damage, I can actually see that the device is physically working, even if I've had to repair it or something to get to this point. So now what I'm going to do is I start the device, and it knows that there's no configuration, so I've got to actually go through this process of, well, do I want an MFT? So I'm going to focus on that particular item. There is an item on the menu that's called Data, and I can select the area that I want to image. So this is completely for dealing with this MFT. All I want to do is copy the MBR and the catalog for the partition that I want. That's it. I don't want anything else at this point. I don't want any files. I don't want to recover anything. All I want to do is copy, say, the small 300 meg database off of the computer. So when I select my imaging area, you'll see it'll initialize a map. The map is actually being written on the destination disk. It's not being written on the original. It's not making any changes to it. It's not spin right. So it is writing all of its configuration information on the destination disk. So it made a small map, and now it's telling me, oh, look, I've identified from the MBR that I have a partition. And I can select that partition. Once I select the partition, now I'm saying, well, what do I want? What do I want to get? Normally, I might say I want something like all files and bitmaps from the MFT record, because that's basically what I would focus on. But then I could whittle it down from there. But that's all I want this machine to do at the moment, is to go and grab this particular item. So when I hit enter, it's going to actually read just the MFT from the drive and nothing else. So it's going to start cloning the MFT wherever those components are. And you'll actually see it fly through the whole drive and say, oh, look, I copied the MFT and I got the bitmap file. So I got those two things. That's all I want from the drive at this point in time. Now that's cloned to the destination disk. Now the destination disk, if I was using Windows and I plug this drive into a Windows machine, the MBR basically tells Windows, the master boot record, tells Windows, I got a partition, and it's an NTFS partition. Please mount me, look at my files. And that causes that little bar to spin and look at all your files and then give you a list that you can actually do something with. I don't want Windows to look at this. There are no files on this machine. If I had something on this drive that was old data or something else that was corrupt data, it would just cause Windows to blue screen, right? So I don't want Windows to look at it. So we have a function in here that basically turns off the MBR, turns off the partition table. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, at the end of a partition table, you have the 2 bytes 558A. Well, it basically changes it to 55BB so that there is no partition flag. So I'm going to go to my destination disk, and I'm going to deactivate the MBR. This is basically so that Windows doesn't blow up. So I deactivate it, it turns it off, and now I'm going to just turn off the machine. So now what I want to do is, now I have this catalog, I'm going to take my actual destination disk, and I'm going to take my destination disk off of the machine, and I'm going to plug it into Windows. So let's see if this switches screens correctly. Okay, so now I've got it plugged into Windows, and Windows wouldn't be able to see anything. Basically, all I would see at this point if it comes up. If the drive initializes and shows up. Yeah. Okay, so basically I have an uninitialized disk, no MBR, and it just has just the all unallocated space. But the piece of software that goes with this device knows that I have a table, and it knows where this table is. So what I should be able to do, now this will look a little beta, and so you Visual Basic people will kind of know what I'm talking about here. Yeah, it's USB external hard drive. For the imager talks through all the ATA commands and actually does all the work at the actual imager level itself. This now I'm actually just using Windows. All it's going to do is read this table, and I'm going to be looking at this table. So this thing starts up. It's called Image Explorer. Now it's really beta. So here's the story. I'm going to just create a. No, I did not build this. This is actually part of the Deep Spar stuff. So I have this thing called Explorer, and basically it sees the 2 hard drives in the list. When I hit the 2 hard drives, it's going to go and it'll see that there's a partition. And now I can actually do something that's called Scan File System. All this does is looks at all my MFT records over here on the right, and it's building me a table. And then once it's done, I'll actually be able to go down through the table. And now you'll actually see all the directories that are on this damaged drive. All I've got is an MFT. There is no data, only the catalog, nothing else. So, as you're looking down the list and you see something you care about, so if I go, say, into the Documents and Settings folder, and I go to Bob Pelamonte, Then Bob has a My Documents folder, and maybe Bob's pictures. Oh, look, I care about hot chicks. I want hot chicks. As I go back in the list, maybe I want some porn. Oh, it's porn music. We'll take that. We go back down the list here, and let's see what else we got. So porn LOL. I'll take that one too. All right, so I've selected some porn off his computer. I don't want the Windows System folder. I don't want unallocated. I don't want anything else. All I care about are these folders. Yeah, the important stuff. The important. What's that? It will be able to export them, and I will be able to look at them. But what's going to happen now is I have to update the catalog. I have to say, hey, give me a catalog and put it on this device. So I'm going to select it for imaging. So basically that's what this now does, is it'll go through 357 commands now. It's going to add them to the list, and it's going to crawl through it, and it's going to update it. You can see it doing the list actually right there, processing, and then it's done. So it's selected them all. So now all I have to do, I'm going to save my project, and I'm going to close. And then I'm just going to unmount this disk, which probably won't do anything because there's no OS on it. So I'm turning it off. And then I take this, again, my destination disk. I'm connecting it back to the machine. And I will turn this thing on. Now I'm going to switch back to that machine so you can see what I'm doing next. What's that? No, I never did get my camera working again. All right, so now the machine's booted. I'm gonna run my application, which is part of the hardware. And yeah. Then this, I'm hitting F11 to turn the power on. This device will now turn the power on. Now keep in mind that there's like all these functions that have existed on this thing for like 3 years before we got this far that does whole bunches of other things. Images in reverse, skip stuff, does all kinds of damaged areas. I'm just going to focus on what these files are. And if there's damage in other places on the drive because FTK wouldn't make it through this drive. It would die in all the unallocated space and all the other stuff I would normally have to copy. So now I have my device selected. And so now I still have the same status. Everything that was on my device before is still there. I can basically do an imaging job. Like you can't do this with FTK. You can't just like stop and come back later. So I can actually stop an image in process, put it on the shelf, do another job, put the two back on, and the configuration that comes from the destination drive will maintain all the status information for everything. Anything that's already been copied, it will never do again. Anything that needs to be copied, it will still have a table to. But right now, it just has a table that basically says, I want to image all those files that you selected. So I will be able to actually start all over at the beginning of the disk, and I will be able to tell it to go ahead, and it will only select those files that I image. And you'll see it skipping big chunks of data. So you'll actually see what it's doing as it's building the list across the bottom. You'll see it going through physical files, headers, blah, blah, blah. And as it's crawling through the disk, it may take 5 minutes or so for this to actually work because this is a 160 gig drive. And it's got to make it from beginning to end, but it's only touching the sectors I told it for the folders that I cared about. So it's actually imaging those sectors. Yeah, Ben. You ever done an MD5 on a damaged hard drive? Well, the piece of beta software that I showed you a minute ago, their plan is to actually be able to tell you percentages of individual files that were recovered. So, for instance, if you have a bad sector in the middle of the area that you care about, it will now know what the file is, and it will give you a report. That part is not done yet. It's still in beta, and so they're still working on that piece. But it actually has a reporting mechanism to even show you the physical files and the directory structure that you're working with. So as it's going through the process, that's the plan. Now, you can still go back and MD5 those or have a report that actually would tell you the percentage of that. But it'll skip fragmentation. There will still be some more later on. I think we selected other directories, so it's skipping all the stuff that we did not allocate. Yes, sir. It counts and it sees the pictures, and so see it has right now 532 pics. It actually has that built in. The problem is that the screen refresh rate is at 100 milliseconds, but it's reading these at 10 millisecond blocks. So you're not seeing all the screen refreshes. I can drop that down, but as a programmer, you're probably well aware that if I do drop that down, the machine is slower. So I will increase the speed for it to write to the screen and decrease the speed of my actual processing. You can disable, or you can make it so high it won't count. But so if you wanted to slow down screen, but it is kind of really informative as you're going through it. In a lot of cases, you might even be able to tell what it is that you've actually got or what your file system is. And keep in mind, it's also doing this by cluster. It's not so it identified the cluster from the operating system, so you're going to get some slack space and stuff with those files and things as well. But for the most part, everything here will be what we care about from a file perspective. So. And it'll skip, like I said, it may take 10 minutes or so for it to get this. There's some point, like after 50% of the drive, that there won't be any more data for me to care about. But anything that's fragmented or anything that we selected later is going to be probably further down the disk. But because this is also doing this sequentially, like when you mount a hard drive in your file system and you start trying to copy stuff off, there's a lot of mounting and fragmentation, and the head's basically thrashing around. In this case, because all of the LBA blocks were laid out in order, it's actually doing it sequentially from beginning of the disk to the end of the disk. So it's not causing any of that thrashing around or causing the head to do anything but move sequentially down the disk as it's going. It is laying the data back out exactly in the same order that it came from, but it's laying it out on the destination disk. So the destination disk is actually almost instantaneously, sector by sector, as this is being read, is being written directly to the destination disk. So even if I pulled the plug on this right now, it would pick up where it left off. So I could do that, but it'll read the configuration and this entire map. I mean, literally, I can like stop this. I can, quit the program, unplug the equipment, walk away, and start it back up. And it'll be right where it was, where it left off, and you'll actually be able to continue from where you actually left off, and it'll continue back from that exact location.
Because it writes the profile, or it writes it on the destination drive, or where it was at?
That's correct. It writes a profile. It actually has a flag. It has this map, and it's an LBA map, and there's actually a flag for every single sector, and it tells what the status of that flag was, and that configuration is loaded into the device every time it starts. And it does it by identifying the serial number and stuff, basically, of the original device. So when that device is bound to this device, as long as those two devices are the only ones that are online, it reads the original configuration file. If I put a new source drive on, and I told it to do that, it would say they don't match, and it would just automatically overwrite the drive again, which is normal in a data recovery process.
Does this only support NTFS?
It can do any drive, but this process that I'm showing you only supports MFTs right now, so it only supports NTFS.
You normally do that by hand, and how long does it take by hand?
Normally, I would tell the imager to do the entire drive, and it will do it, like I said, kind of in any order, but including damage or whatever. So right now, we're at the end of that particular chunk of data. Now at the end, it'll turn around and it'll go backwards. It'll do 3 passes with different changes in between each pass. I can do 4 passes and make it do anything I want. And I can tell it turn off power if I have a failure. I can actually program steps in between, so I actually have the ability to choose like a what-if scenario. So I can actually say how fast, what time, how many milliseconds. But if I actually got a sector that actually had a particular type of error, which I've covered in other talks that have actually done what types of errors, I could actually tell it then to power off the drive. I could actually tell it then to power it off and turn the drive off and turn it back on again. So I don't have to be there to finish the job, and it will continue on from there. So and you'll see, like I said, at the end of this, it'll turn around and it'll go backwards. It's going to do a pass backwards, which will change how the cache actually works on the device in case there was a problem with memory or something on the device. Going backwards actually kind of, in effect, disables it, even though we can disable the cache directly. But it does do a byte comparison during what's called an ECC pass. If the drive actually returns an error, most equipment will actually just fail. It'll just say abort, and it will not return a sector. But you can actually request the sector back with certain pieces of hardware. So you can get the sector back. Let's say 512 bytes, maybe 1 byte was damaged. You can actually request that back, and it'll do a bitwise comparison and you can tell it how many times you want it to read. I can say read it 15 times, compare them, and figure out what the most probable answer is. So quite a complex scenario. All right, so anyway, so it's done. It's actually going backwards. I have no errors at this point for the files that I care about. So I'm going to just stop it. I'm going to turn the thing off. And then I'm going to take the original destination disk again, the destination disk I wrote all the data to, and I'm going to bring it back online. And so now it comes up, and you'll still see I have a deactivated MBR. It's exactly the same state as what it was, except that now I'll actually have my file content. So I'll execute my Image Explorer. Unfortunately, the project doesn't do a whole lot at the moment. Select my drive. So I'm just getting the list again. And you'll see all the green sectors, like wherever I click around on a drive. So we did this, let's say we did this porn LOL directory. So there's a folder called Vixens. And so I can actually, you can actually look at the map and you can see the file that I'm highlighting where all these blue dots are in the bottom of the green. So the greens are successful. It copied this file, and the blue dot means they belong to this file. So you can actually have others. Like I can scroll around. Anything that's green, I would actually have a copy of. So like if I'm scrolling down through the drive, like all this space, there's nothing there. I didn't copy any of those sectors. So anyway, so I can actually go back now. Let's just say I want this folder. This is the one that actually has the data now on the drive. So if I save these files, it'll now save them in this folder. And I can go, even while it's writing them to my destination, it's storing them on this local machine. I now actually have this configuration. And while it's doing that, I'm going to go look at them. So these actually came off of that destination disk. So I can go look at them in thumbnails. Now the program's still actually exporting. It could be anything that's wrong with drives from a standpoint of media damage, head damage, or certain locations of a drive that actually have physical damage to them. This one is not that bad. It's not very bad, but if I had a very badly damaged drive, I mean, keep in mind I'm trying to do a demo here, dude. I wanted it to work while I'm here. If I have a very badly damaged drive or something, like I have one on Friday that actually rebuilt the board and rebuilt the head assembly and had to actually resolder a chip on it. And it still ended up with 1,600 errors at the end of it. But 1,600 is nothing. I mean, that's, 8 megs or something. So so not much to deal with. So I've exported just those folders. And again, I did some others, so we could actually go back. Remember, I actually selected earlier, say, this guy, and I did my documents, and I did the Hot Chicks folder. This one is kind of a demo drive at the moment. I didn't want to show too much bad stuff. So, but I've done many of these the same way in the last 30 days. So, but I can export the data and then go look at it.
What percentage do you do is NTFS?
Well, the second most seen hard drives, besides like NTFS, literally is like 90% of what you get. HFS is probably most of the rest of the 10%, and occasionally Linux or NAS boxes are about all that's left. This will image all of those drives, but it will not do this function, finding the individual files yet. It'll only do that on NTFS. It won't do it on any of the others. So, but that's typically the majority of what I'm looking at from that standpoint. So anyway, that was just demonstrating it coming from that drive and getting that process. But I think that this is a pretty profound process that we're actually drilling down now with the same device, the same tools, the same equipment, and able to actually try to drill down specifically to individual files and actually get this done. So, yeah. DeepSpar is the vendor, but they also call the product the DeepSpar Disk Imager. So they name it like Microsoft Office, same thing. So they use the same tools, the same idea to do everything. No, as a matter of fact, this upgrade that came free, like I've owned this box for like 3 years now, this upgrade came free, and everything that they've done so far that has been upgrades, with the exception of changes to hardware, has been free. So if there's a change to the hardware, which has only happened once, and it wasn't necessary, you didn't have to have it. So that's the only time they've ever charged anybody anything. So all the software that's on the box has been updated for free. So, what's that?
If you open it up, what's inside? Just like FPGA or?
I don't know exactly what's inside of it, other than the fact that it's probably just a flash device that also can control the physical power itself. It's probably related to the power switch and stuff as well. I mean, it's basically doing all its commands through the ATA command set, and then some enhanced knowledge that they actually have with regards to individual vendors. Because one of the other things that this tool can do, which is the only tool in its price range that actually does this, but I mean, it doesn't matter. It can do all of them, including ZIF drives and everything else. The only problem right now is actually solid state, because solid state drives don't conform to the standard ATA subset.
Does it have the interface connectors?
Yeah, they're just bridge ports for all of them. Yeah, you need a PI license to do this, especially if it's on a forensics job, right? Inside joke or outside joke, however you want to look at it.
How do you have, you wouldn't have badge sectors or anything like that on a solid state drive, right? So you just have right?
Well, I wish I could say that was true, but no, you do have bad sectors. It's usually they just get completely obliterated, and you don't get control of them at all. So that's the biggest problem.
Worse on the forensics end?
It is worse, yeah. It's worse on the data recovery end, too. Yes, we have a problem right now. If the MBR is messed up, it does not currently look for partition structures that the MBR doesn't know. So you could hand build one if you wanted to. They are writing a partition search feature. Keep in mind this is all beta right now. So they're writing a partition search feature for those same partitions. So that is currently a problem, though. It will try to do an ECC recovery on the MBR, though. So, for instance, even if there's one byte that's still in error, it'll try to recover from it. So, but this tool does some other things, and this is not a part of the demo I prepared. So, if it blows up, if I actually wanted to do something with heads, there's actually a function that actually looks at heads, and you can turn on and off bad heads, and so you can individually. It'll individually search through the zone tables, and it'll build the zone table listing. So anybody who knows what zcav is will know what I'm talking about. Bonnie++. It's using zone tables, and it's using zone tables to identify all the heads. And so depending on how long, sometimes this can take an hour to actually run. But it'll build a list of all of the heads, and you can individually turn off a head. So those drives that have a clunking error, but they still come ready, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, like 3 minutes after you start a drive, and it's going clunk, 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 clunk. And then it comes ready, and it looks like you can copy files, but then it starts erroring out and stuff. Sometimes that's a bad head. And you can actually turn off the bad head, image all the good stuff, and then go back and try to deal with the bad head or make a new head or do something like that from that standpoint, replace the head. But so in a minute what will happen was when it's done with the zone table, it'll give me an option to turn off individual heads. So I think this one's only got 3 heads or 4 heads. I've only seen, I see 4 go by. So... Yeah, no, you don't care about the other heads, so you can turn it off. It'll actually fill in the holes. It'll fill in the gaps. So now that it's done, if I actually went to the list and I actually looked at the process, I actually now have 4 heads. I can actually go down and turn off an individual head. This is the only tool in this price range which actually does that.
Does that disable a certain amount of data?
Yes, it does. It'll read whatever that head is assigned to. It will skip all of that data. But that does not mean that you don't have, like zones are actually divided up according to numbers of LBA blocks that are consecutive. So zones, it may still be 2 megs. You may still have a good Word document, even though one head might be missing. So
Does it do secure erase?
it is not meant to do secure erase, no. But you can do that with a floppy.
I tried doing that.
And you said,
Yeah.
and then most of the drives have that wipe through write command, ATA command, wipe through write.
Yeah, it'll wipe a drive. It'll do a wipe drive, but it's not doing secure erase. So it's not doing anything with bad sectors, bad blocks from that standpoint for wiping them. But any other questions? So anyway, I think this is really cool. I think this is the direction that everything's going with data recovery tools. And so we're now actually kind of getting this merger that we didn't have before. We used to be you'd have to do the drive, And then you'd have to go and do something like run RStudios or some other data recovery software to read what you've recovered, and you wouldn't know what your bad blocks were or which files. Like if I had 25 bad sectors, I'd have no idea what I had. But here, I'll get a good percentage, and I'll get a list, and I'll know what I'm looking at specifically, if it's good or bad. So, but that's what I had. So, thank you.